I'm Richard Pyatt. Welcome back to Creating Dementia Solutions, a Miles for Memories program. And we're working on 3 years now of talking about things that are very relevant and important for folks who are on a dementia journey, particularly those who may be helping them, caregivers. In fact, if you've been with us for these episodes, you know over the last couple of years, we focused on a few different things to try and bring some clarity to them. The notion of caregiving, as well as the Lancet list of factors that can help mitigate risk. This year, in 2026, we're going to talk a little bit about the personal stories of dementia and also the notion of caregiving, particularly among those who may not realize that they've taken on a caregiving role. Sherry Sherbin is back with us again, founder of Miles for Memories, who can certainly lead us in the discussion, set the tone about the personal stories of dementia and the notion of caregiving. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We were chatting before we started the program, and you made a point of saying you've been a caregiver since you were a child. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get to that. But certainly your personal story about dementia, your connection to it, resulted in the founding of Miles for Memories.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, you know, it's bigger than just me, so I want to make sure that we say that right out of the get-go. There were a group of us that were working towards some other endeavors, and what we realized is that there wasn't anything here locally for the person who's going on this journey today. And so what could we begin to develop to help your loved one today, to help the person who is experiencing some level of dementia today, and what does it look like? So we began to look at what the need was based on those that were in the room, where we should start and how we should get going. And we started with the process of drawing in all sorts of emergency responders and law enforcement, and discovered that probably the best first thing we could do is look at how we identify someone, a safe return of someone, how we can create a level of peace of mind for family members and caregivers. And out of that, the Help Home program was born, and all of the safe return products and technology.
Did this eventuate because you personally realized, I don't know where to go for help with this?
Yeah, so we were reaching out for a couple of different scenarios personally. It wasn't until much later in the journey of Miles for Memories that even my dad got to a point where he wandered. And so we had to look at how we provide levels of care for him. Was he still safe? Did we need to make some changes in that particular realm? And it was the beginning of a whole series of steps that we as a family had to choose to make.
Mm-hmm. I want to linger on that a second, because I think there are folks who now realize that a loved one is going to be on this path. And it's daunting, isn't it, to imagine, how am I going to help?
Yeah.
And you were in that spot.
Oh, sure. And one of the bigger things about that whole conversation is that, first of all, you have to be willing to recognize that all these little symptoms that are occurring along the way collectively mean more than what they did individually. And now we need to just started to look at maybe a chronic condition here versus explaining it away because of a substance issue, medication issue, infection-related issues, and a host of other things that can create some of the similar symptoms, but yet it has now gone beyond that.
So you were both in a position personally to recognize this was the case, but also at the same time realizing I'm not sure where the resources are, or maybe not all of them.
Yes.
Yeah, so how do you do that? How do you live in that moment where now someone for whom you care is affected, but still have the ability to say, I can do something about this. We can pull together and create an organization that addresses this at the same time?
Well, when you get to a point where you are just struggling with a solution all on your own, you realize that there's a lot of great minds out there that collectively we can bounce ideas off each other and see things more clearly. You know, when you're in the middle of something, it's really hard to see what's really happening, but someone sitting next to you can say, "No, Sherry, we've been seeing this for about 3 months now. Let's look at this one a little bit differently," and making sure that we stay engaged with physicians and really pushing for answers as opposed to waiting for, well, let's look at what's going to be changing in 6 months or a year or something like that. And for me, that wasn't sufficient.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hurry up and wait any longer.
I see. Well, that helps bring an understanding to the idea of motivation.
Yes.
And how you got this started.
Yeah.
What was the reception at that time? You were already working on some other things. You had some people around you who were sharing the same passion, so I presume that was helpful.
Oh, yeah. The minute we decided to move forward in this particular direction, everybody in the room was on board. And there are so many individuals that are still on board from the very beginning 14 years ago, that which is part of why, you know, we want to talk about those experiences over the last 14 years and what was the catalyst for you to stay engaged and be a part of this moving forward, and invite others who are experiencing many of these scenarios or even a part of them to jump in and to look for solutions, to engage in creating solutions, and make it better for the community at large.
You talked about having been a caregiver since childhood.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. I'm curious about at what point at this stage did you become a caregiver, and what did that look like? I presume that a loved one can often snap into caregiver mode quickly and maybe not know it.
I would say that's very true. I mean, sometimes we take on those roles and responsibilities strictly because of our closeness to the individual. I mean, if you're a spouse, you're a spouse. And so now you start doing things a little bit differently. You're the spouse, you're there. Maybe you're a child, an adult child of that particular individual, and you start picking up and filling in and being that support person all along the way. And before you even realize it, you are a caregiver in a different way. And it just sort of begins to happen. You know, I could talk to you about the litany of family members that all came before my dad in the very end, from my great-grandmother to my grandmother to my mother-in-law to my mother's mother, and so on and so forth. Along the way, statistically, I feel like I'm going to land in that category, and as a result, looking at prevention became really important. So another category for everybody in the group. How do we look at prevention when we know a cure is so far away? So, you know, we can do something about that. And the Lancet Journal agrees with us, right? Or maybe we agree with them, depending on how you want to look at that. I don't really know.
It's a lot of agreement.
But we've been talking about it for a very long time.
Yes.
Yes.
So movement programming research,
Yeah.
That's Miles for Memories. The movement part is what you're referring to. What are some of the ways you could help mitigate it? This is one of them. And so you've heard us talk about movement a lot. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So the caregiver in you as a child,
Yeah.
that was inherent somewhere that probably helped you snap into action as an adult.
Well, you know, the caregiving as a child was a little bit different. Caregiving for me as a child took the form of being there for my great-grandmother and allowing my parent, allowing my grandparent to step away from being in that environment in that moment. I got to hear all sorts of stories about what I thought was her youth and things that they did, and I found her fascinating, and I just wanted to learn and hear more and more stories. And truth be told, I didn't know until I was in college that the life she was describing to me was actually Casablanca the movie.
Oh.
It was a revelation that happened in the middle of class in college. And the thing I think is really important about that is we often talk about always correcting or often correcting someone with dementia and trying to get the story right. They never took the time to stop and say, no, Sherry, that didn't really happen. But instead listened to me saying, I can't wait to go see great grandma and hear what happens next. So they encouraged me through my interest to be a part of what was happening. I created and developed a bond with my great-grandmother, and it didn't so much matter what the story was, but rather it was still the time that we spent together. And that's the part I cherish. I do watch Casablanca a lot now because it reminds me of her. But I stepped in a way that was a positive scenario for both of my relatives at the same time.
Yeah. Boy, that story seemed familiar.
Like, wait a minute, she's going to get on that train, isn't she? Dadgummit.
So it is about, yes, it's about the connection that you made.
Yes.
And it seems as though maybe for some people, the notion of trying to make that connection might seem a little less important from the standpoint that they may not remember this in an hour.
Yeah.
So do I need to put this kind of effort into this? Maybe my focus should be helping them in some other way.
Yeah.
Did you battle that? Did that come up for you?
I think the bigger picture is when we have all of the folks that come together as part of the leadership team, they all bring their personal experiences, the time that they interact with, sometimes clients, sometimes loved ones, to be able to say, this is an issue, how do we tackle this issue? Right? This is an issue, how do we tackle this issue? Which one should we tackle first? Because we have more resources to be able to do that. And being willing to be open to the challenges that folks have and determining whether we can collectively also create a solution. It might not be the only solution, but at least it's a solution to get moving in that direction. And being able to work with all the other resources that are out there in the community, depending on who already provides what. We don't want to duplicate anything, but cheer on anybody else who's going to jump into this equation and be part of it. And it's a very open organization. It's full of a whole lot of volunteers who put their heart into why this is really valuable.
Do you ever meet folks? I mean, I'm listening to you, and that all sounds very proactive. But there could be some folks whom you've met, and they're not in that zone, right? They're a little bit frozen in terms of how do I do this, or they're caught up in the notion of depression or inaction.
Right.
How does Miles for Memories handle that?
You know, one of the things I think is very telling in that process are the number of individuals that we get phone calls from all the time, right? I was telling the group at a meeting recently on New Year's Eve, on Christmas Eve, on Christmas Day, folks that were calling my cell phone because today I was at a point where I just was finally willing to talk to somebody. And pulling myself away from the family for half an hour to just listen to them chat and figure out what next steps they need to make is all part of some of the things that we're now doing for caregivers going forward and the different steps that we can take. And maybe sometimes it's a referral to a different program for something that might need to be done. So all of that to say, folks are hearing it, and when they're ready, they'll jump in. And I'm inviting anybody who's currently a caregiver that wants to be part of the next engagement process that we're looking at, which is a mentor-mentee program, another person to help someone else go through what they went through. And while each situation is very, very different, there's a lot that's very, very similar.
Well, there you are. So just one of the many angles that Miles from Memories helps fulfill to try and help folks move in a proactive direction, help them with the notion of caregiving, because we're going to be in it. You're going to be caring for someone, even if it's once a week or once a month. There's some kind of caregiving aspect. I think your point too has been, we may not think it is, but it is.
We don't even recognize it. And sometimes we're not even willing to admit that a loved one is experiencing some type of dementia either. So I'll often harp on diagnosis is really important because frankly, it might not be dementia at all. It might be that new combination of medications from the get-go, and we just need to change those up. Sometimes we just need to be willing to take the action, as scary as it might be. I've been there, I understand, and make some adjustments and some changes. There's people to help you with that.
Yes. Well, you see what happened here. There is a great amount of motivation that came out of this, that you helped inspire in Miles for Memories, that was contagious in a way. Folks became involved because you set this tone, and that continues. And so that's what we'll talk about, creating Dementia Solutions this year, the notion of caregiving, but also the personal stories and why people are connected to Miles for Memories and remain committed to it. You just heard the founding member talk about where that cornerstone is and what that means. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
And we'll continue with these stories, and I'm sure we'll talk to you before 2027.
Well, I do hope so. You know I am always available, right?
We'll be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Sherry Sherman is the founder of Miles for Memories, chief volunteer, and 14 years after the founding of Miles for Memories, folks are still committed, and maybe more so, to it. And we'll be talking with a number of them over the course of this year. I'm Richard Pyatt. Creating Dementia Solutions is a Miles for Memories program. You'll be alerted best if you follow Miles for Memories on Facebook. You'll see when these episodes come available. See you again soon.